Hello. Welcome to this SCORE webinar on strategic school staffing, Tennessee's opportunity to sustain and elevate great teaching. I'm Dr. Sharon Roberts, SCORE's Chief K-12 Impact Officer. You're likely on the call today because there's something you know for sure that all of us in education have known for a long time, because we've seen it over and over again, that access to an effective teacher is the #1 school-based factor for improving student outcomes. And if you're in Tennessee, you also know, similar to other states, we started last school year with 1,000 educator vacancies, meaning that we have an urgent priority in getting more effective educators in front of more students as quickly as we can. To support Tennessee with this effort, SCORE has spent this school year working to understand more about Tennessee's educator labor market and to share those findings broadly. In February, we released a paper entitled Strengthening the Educator Labor Market, a look at Tennessee's data. This paper highlights findings from 15 district research partnership with Tennessee's Education Research Alliance, and it lays out a framework for comprehensive action in the state. Our second paper, released in April, acknowledges the unique challenges faced by rural districts and works to shed light on next steps for this content. And today, we're releasing the third paper in this series, Strategic School Staffing, Tennessee's Opportunity to Sustain and Elevate Great Teaching. This paper works to lay out the research on educator talent and offer examples of how school districts and schools can act on this research through strategic staffing models designed to both improve the educator pipeline and student outcomes. Importantly, Tennessee has a decades-long history of addressing educator talent issues, grounded in evidence that teacher effectiveness is central to improving student outcomes. Systems of educator evaluation and support, adoption of high-quality instructional materials, and a focus on differentiated compensation models have been the core of this work. And more recently, Tennessee has been taking additional groundbreaking steps, including the implementation of flexible funding formulas, increasing pathways into the profession through Grow Your Own initiatives, teacher scholarships, and flexibility around emergency permits. Last year, Tennessee also increased the minimum salaries for educators to $50,000 across the state, which will go into effect by 2026. However, as we face the real need for more educator talent now, we need to acknowledge that many of these strategies are mostly geared toward attracting new talent, just one component of a more comprehensive educator talent strategy. And ultimately, this approach asks students to play the long game. They also represent a big bet that interest in the teaching profession as it's currently configured will improve and that new teachers recruited through these pathways will stay. Recent data from a sampling of 15 districts across Tennessee suggests that these assumptions might not yield the needed return on the educator labor market. Given the 40% decline in EPP enrollment over the last decade, a 20% attrition rate for teachers in their first 3 years in Tennessee, and salary not making the top 3 reasons Tennessee educators report for leaving, it's likely that these strategies must go beyond addressing preparation barriers and increasing salaries. Given these trends, Tennessee is at a crossroads for ensuring students get the education they deserve and for reclaiming the status of teaching as a highly sought-after profession. To support Tennessee in this priority, we'll spend the rest of the call today walking through the research, district case studies, and guiding principles highlighted in this report. We believe this information can offer state and district leaders in Tennessee a set of next steps for building on the innovative work already underway to pursue a more comprehensive set of strategies. Our students and educators can't wait for us to act, and that is what this webinar is really about. Leveraging what we know about educator talent to develop strategic staffing models that have the potential to sustain and elevate great teaching in Tennessee, and to create a not just an adequate teacher pipeline for our students, but a flourishing one. Now I'm going to turn to my colleague, Karen Lawrence, SCORE's Senior Director of Networks and Partnerships, to walk us through the research and examples in this paper.
Thank you, Sharon. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to start by sort of setting the table a little bit about what we mean when we say strategic staffing by offering two examples of hypothetical scenario elementary schools. So imagine with me for a minute that there are two elementary schools in Tennessee who are really working to prioritize improvement in math for grades 3 through 5. And to reach this goal, they both choose to focus on staffing, but they do so in different ways. So in elementary school A, again, they really want to elevate their math outcomes for students in grades 3 through 5. The strategy that's chosen in this elementary school is to hire a math instructional coach who will do classroom walkthroughs, offer feedback to math educators, and support assessment and data analysis to inform instruction moving forward. So as the elementary school does this, over the course of the year, they do start to see improvements in formative assessments in math, which is really exciting. However, as the year progresses, there are other factors that start to emerge around talent in the building. So here are some things that school begins to contend with, given this chosen strategy. One, the funding for the math coaching role starts to become in question over the course of the year, unsure if they're going to be able to fund that in the next year. The highly effective 4th grade teacher, maybe one of the most effective teachers in the building, is preparing to leave to take an instructional coaching role in a neighboring district. So there's now a vacancy on the horizon for one of the really highly effective teachers in the building. And the 1st-year teacher is getting math support, but is continuing to struggle with other elements like classroom management and just asking for more help and support and time for someone in their room to give them just more development support. So that's one scenario. Again, the outcomes here is students did improve under this model, but now there's just a lot more going on with staffing churn that this school leader is having to work through. So let's consider the strategy in elementary school B. They decide to offer significant stipends to the two most highly effective math teachers in the building and to shift their role to a 50% release times to support math educators as well as new educators in the building. They also start to see over time the student outcomes improve in math. And here's where they end up staffing wise at the end of the year using this approach. The math lead teachers, the highly effective educators that were given these stipends, are really excited to stay for next year to build on this work, to continue to support their peers, and just build up more the team that they've formed around math. Other teachers with a range of experience levels are reporting positive perceptions of the support given the time that they're able to have these teachers in their room. And a math educator from a neighboring district has now called the school to see if there are other opportunities to join the team or for leadership. So while they both took staffing strategies, there is obviously a difference between these two schools. So why? How did we end up in this spot? The approach in elementary school B really goes beyond a strategy to address student outcomes only by incorporating key principles from educator talent research that, for those of us who've been in the field, there are pillars that we've known about for a really long time. There are things like extending the reach of effective educators should improve student outcomes. We know novice teachers need more support. Giving teacher leaders dedicated time to offer that support, implementing differentiated compensation, among others. So not only was the strategy here to improve student outcomes in elementary school B, they wove in these other elements that are supported by research around educator staffing, retention, improvement into the way that they focused on their goal. So the combined effect of these strategies gave elementary school B the best chance of continuing to improve teaching and learning into a second year across the math teams. So this leads us to what we think is really behind some of these models that you may have been hearing about more over the last few years, to reimagine the teacher role, innovative staffing, strategic staffing is the language that we've chosen for this paper. But we believe that these models really all rely on some things that we know to be true about educator staffing and are kind of at the heart of the strategies that schools and districts in Tennessee may want to adopt as they consider how to better support their students and educators right now. So we're going to spend just a little bit of time walking through what we think are 5 really pillars in the research that support this kind of example model, but also other models that are now out there and emerging in the field that are showing promise for how to structure the teacher role and teams. So the first one is that access to an effective educator is the #1 school-based factor to improve student outcomes. We know this. So making the kinds of decisions around staffing that would extend the reach of our most effective educators without fully pulling them out of the classroom creates an opportunity that research tells us should improve student outcomes. We also know from the research that teachers put a high value on professional development that allows them to collaborate with each other and learn from effective educators. It's normally one of the first things they say that they want. How do you want support? It's usually, I want more time with my peers. I want to see other effective educators doing their work and learn from them. So this kind of job embedded coaching has been found to be the most effective. So then on each of these research slides, there's just 4 more of them. You'll also see a kind of a pullout of what's happening in Tennessee around this area and what we think how it could be integrated into a strategic staffing solution. So right now, Tennessee over this past year had 4,702 educators, or 19%, who earned a level 5 using our TBOS value added model, and nearly 3,000 more teachers who earned a level 4, indicating that we can identify who some of our most effective teachers are who are getting great growth from kids, and identifying them for some of these kinds of roles where they're having an impact on their peers and perhaps even more students. The second research pillar that we think these kinds of reimagine the teacher role models, innovative staffing models are really grounded in is the fact that novice teachers need more support. On average, during their first few years on the job, research has shown that they are less effective than their more tenured peers on average. However, their job descriptions are nearly identical to veteran educators. So a first-year teacher walking into a classroom might have really the exact same job description as a 20-year master educator under current staffing models in many cases. Research also highlights solutions like mentors and sheltered roles for novice educators to give them more time to develop. Maybe they have a smaller class size or more limited subject areas, and that this is also a positive way to support retention over time. Research has also shown that one of the most salient factors in supporting new educators is having that common planning time with other teachers in the same subject. And so where does Tennessee stand on how our novice teachers are doing and what we can do more of? Currently, Tennessee loses 1 in 5 teachers in their first 3 years, which is higher than our more veteran educators in terms of attrition. But we have an opportunity to integrate teacher candidates from so many pathways now across our state into meaningful practice experiences. A third thing that we think is really important for us to consider in terms of the research base for educator talent and how to support it better is increased access to same race teachers makes an impact for students of color. Studies have found that students of color with same race teachers are more likely to take more advanced math classes and be placed in gifted programs. It's also shown a causal relationship between Black students having Black teachers and increases in attendance rates, math and reading scores, high school graduation, and college enrollment. Multiple studies show that schools that hire earlier recruit from colleges and organizations with Black and Latinx students and meaningfully include current teachers of color into the hiring process, increase the number of teachers of color in their building. And right now, Tennessee has many districts and schools that do not have an educator workforce that reflects student racial identities. So we know that there is talent out there in our districts across the state that we can be pulling from and leaning in and getting them into the educator workforce in a way that maybe we haven't before. The next piece that we think is really critical to connecting this idea of strategic staffing, how are we engaging with our educators, but also impacting student outcomes in the way that we're working towards our goals as schools and districts, is that stable and effective school leadership matters. Research has shown repeatedly that teacher turnover rates are lower under more effective principals. More recent research points to an increase in teacher attrition in schools with less experienced principals, and those effects are compounded in schools with higher rates of economically disadvantaged students. And then finally, in terms of student outcomes, the impact of an effective school principal on outcomes is comparable to that of an effective classroom educator. So where are we as a state when we think about our administrator talent, our administrator pool right now? Currently, Tennessee, 39% of administrators are in their first 3 years on the job. And Tennessee educators cite leadership as the second most important factor influencing their decision to leave school next year. So as we think about Tennessee's opportunity to think differently about its educator workforce, we also have an opportunity to really support our school leaders. And thinking about that in that kind of model that we just showed in elementary school B, where that sort of deep coaching and math content expertise was delegated and distributed away from the principal in a way that is supporting the educators, making a positive impact, but probably also offering deep support to that administrator who's likely newer in their role in our state. Lastly, we think that strategic staffing models are a great opportunity to incorporate this pillar of research around teacher salaries and differentiated compensation. So differentiated compensation in the research shows that it can improve retention of effective educators. Research conducted through meta-analysis and a comprehensive review of studies of teacher retention all confirm that salaries are a key component in teacher retention. But we can think about this in a couple different layers. The first being that at its most basic level, higher salaries can attract more high-performing educators to positions in lower performing or harder to staff schools, and that higher pay for teacher leader roles can improve retention. However, connecting pay to student outcomes can make an impact for improvements in both reading and math, and teacher compensation tied to student achievement and graduation rates has also been shown to improve retention. The great news is this is a place where Tennessee has a really strong foundation on which to build from. So Tennessee requires districts to implement differentiated compensation models to support things like harder to staff schools or to pay for additional roles and responsibilities, like around teacher leadership as an example, or to honor strong performance. So we think this is really exciting. Beyond this research that we think elementary B was a great example of, and that strategic staffing models or reimagining the teacher role, innovative teaming, all of these things, we think they're grounded in these kinds of, again, pillars of research that we've known as a field for a really long time and just need to act on more with more urgency and more authenticity in our models. It's also important to think about what are teachers currently saying. So that's more of the quantitative research, but how are teachers feeling right now? So the role of the classroom teacher as currently configured is feeling untenable to a majority of educators. And this comes from a national survey released this year. And they want to spend more time on tasks related directly to teaching. Nationally, 87% of educators have shared that they feel classroom teachers have too many responsibilities to be effective. And survey data also indicate that these educators want to get back to the core of their role, spending more time on activities related to instruction rather than additional tasks like hall duty, lunch monitoring, and counseling. And in Tennessee specifically, our most recent Tennessee Educator Survey results, teachers do cite workload as a top issue for leaving the profession. So as we consider the research on what could be effective practices for improving teacher retention, which then also can improve student outcomes over time, there's an element here in our research that we would call, what do we think we know about educator talent, but where might we have misunderstandings or misconceptions about our industry and about the role in particular. So pulling from some recent research, we saw that we might need to ask this question of ourselves: are teacher salaries really too low to attract new talent into the profession? So recent research has highlighted a potential misunderstanding in the general public around what teachers actually make at the national level, consistently reporting salaries around 50% lower than the average. So for 2021-22 school year, the average national, not in Tennessee, average national teacher salary was a little over $66,000, but Americans guessed an average salary that was about $22,000 lower. A similar study was done with STEM college students, asking, what salary would it take for you to be an educator, and what do you think the current salary is? And that same kind of discrepancy was shown in that study as well. The salary they named that they would want to have as an educator was actually the salary that was available around them, but they just didn't know it and underestimated what teachers were actually making. Another factor to consider is, do teachers really not like their jobs? So what you'll see here is a rate of occupation change for 100 different job categories during the 2020-21 school year. I did not put all 100 job categories here on this slide, just a handful. The top level of turnover, which was sort of beverage service roles, and then the lowest level of turnover, which was judicial workers, but then wanted to highlight where educators fell in that sort of rate of turnover among 100 different industries in this comparison. You'll see elementary, middle school, and math teachers had about a 4% turnover rate on average across the nation. And this actually, out of that 100 job categories, put them around 30th. And then secondary teachers also, so middle school was also around 30th out of 100 job categories in terms of the highest rate of attrition, so well below half. And then there was a higher rate for our pre-K kindergarten teachers. This put them closer to around 60th, I think, out of 100. But again, this notion of comparing educators and the role that they play to other industries and how we're responding and how our salaries compare in this field is a really important comparison. And the last point I'll make here about really understanding the educator labor market specifically in Tennessee, but beyond, is that educator labor markets are highly localized. So as Sharon alluded to earlier, the first report that we put out earlier this year, understanding Tennessee's data around the educator labor markets, we looked at 15 different districts, and we included an analysis of the average staff salary of a district employee compared to the median family income in the county. And in 7 of the 15 districts, the average salary was higher for someone in this education industry. So thinking a little bit beyond the educator role, than the average median income in that county for a family. Tennessee was also recently ranked 2nd in the nation for the strength and stability of our teacher retirement system. And another study found the system to be well-funded and stable. So again, thinking about more broadly, what is the research that we have to support educator retention, to attract new educators, and also to support our students and novice educators and our leaders, given everything that we know? What are the structures that we have in place that can do that? But also, where does teaching and the industry of education sit more broadly as we think about other jobs that educators or aspiring educators could be attracted to in Tennessee? So given what we know from the research and the perspectives of educators, we believe that Tennessee leaders, educators, and education stakeholders have an opportunity to more deeply understand the context of education as a career across the state, to ensure potential educators have all the facts as they consider the profession and work towards innovative solutions that can attract, retain, and support excellent educators. That's really what's at the heart of this report and at the heart of the recommendations. And also the examples that you're going to hear. So we are honored today to be joined by leaders from 2 counties, one from Texas, Ector County Independent School District. We'll be joined by Dr. Scott Muri, who's their superintendent. And then later we'll be joined by Erin Swanson, who is an assistant superintendent in Edgecombe County Public Schools, because they both are working to integrate that research that you heard earlier around educator roles and leadership and support to really build out a robust teacher pipeline that is stable and diverse and effective, and capitalizes on some of these newer models for strategic staffing that you may have heard about and how they're thinking about educator roles in a brand new way. So with that, I would love to invite Dr. Scott Muri to join us on this Zoom and tell us about Ector County. Thank you, Scott.
I appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me today. It was actually fun to hear you walk through what's happening in Tennessee and then the type of research. It makes an individual want to move to Tennessee to know all the good work that's happening. So I appreciate this opportunity to share a little bit about the work. So my name is Scott Muri. I'm the superintendent of Ector County Independent School District. We are located in West Texas. If you have read the book or seen the movie or watched the series Friday Night Lights, that is our home. We have one of our 6 high schools is Permian High School, and so that all of that was filmed in our area, and that's our claim to fame. Talk a little bit more about our system, but who we are demographically. We serve 33,700 students in 45 pre-K through 12th grade schools in our organization. About 80% of our students are Hispanic, 14% white, 4% African American, and then 70% of our students live in poverty. So we are a majority minority district. And then again, the vast majority of our students come from families of poverty. And 32 languages are spoken here, English and Spanish being the predominant languages in our organization. So that's contextually who we are. We're also in the Permian Basin. So the map shows you, again, the western part of Texas, but what you don't see is all of the gas and oil fields. We are the largest oil producing area in the world right now. And so if you fill up your car today, thank you, because those dollars eventually trickle back to the state of Texas. And a couple of pennies might make their way into public education in our state. So if we can move to the next slide from a context perspective. And so we're talking about human capital today, but let me kind of share with you briefly the context for our system. So I came here as the superintendent in 2019, having worked in several other states, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and then I also worked in Houston, Texas. So I was in East Texas. And so West Texas was new to me as an organization. So I started in July of 2019 and was quickly introduced to some very significant challenges. We in Texas have 1,200 school districts. 800 of those districts have fewer than 1,000 students. So the vast majority of our districts are small in nature and many of them very rural, but a lot of school districts. And academically, this system was ranked among the lowest in our state, and no one wants to be 1,200 out of 1,200. So we faced some real significant academic challenges in 2019. And when you start to peel back the layers, as we understand the why, one of the primary reasons was something that's already been stated. You know, the teacher is the #1 in-school factor as we think about student achievement, and we were missing a large set. In fact, one of the things I heard today that Karen mentioned is this year, and it may have been last year, but I don't remember the year, but Tennessee as a state was missing 1,000 teachers, so 1,000 teacher vacancies. When I came to this system, we were missing 350 teachers just as a single school district. So 18% of our teacher workforce didn't exist on the first day of school in August of 2019, nor did they exist on day 10, day 20, day 90. We didn't fill any of those vacancies all year. And so with the trickle-down effect of that is, of course, on our students. It meant that many, actually thousands of our kids came to school every day having a substitute teacher, so a revolving door of subs. And it didn't just happen in 2019. It's also the story of 2018 and 17 and 16. And so for years, this system had suffered through not having enough teachers. In fact, we had students that had come to school for several years in our system and never had a real certified teacher. They had substitutes year after year. And in my opinion, that was the primary cause of the challenges academically that we were facing. And then when you have that level of vacancy, many times the folks that you are hiring may not be individuals that ultimately possess the quality that you need to serve the students that you have. And so we were really dealing with some significant staffing issues as well as teacher quality issues. And then our academic ranking was among the lowest in Texas. And so we were in crisis, and we needed to significantly change the way that we were doing business as an organization, because what we were doing wasn't working. So we put together a strategic plan. And that strategic plan had 3 areas of focus. We needed to fix our foundation. We needed to fix the way that our kids were learning, the very traditional modes of learning happening. And then we needed to fix our our staffing opportunities, and so the talent that we had in our organization. And so we looked at our traditional human resource department and thought differently about talent in our organization. So we looked at 3 specific areas of investment from an organization. We needed to grow our own. In the United States of America, an interesting piece of research says that 60% of America's teachers teach within 25 miles of the high school from which they graduated. So what that said to us is that we need to focus inwardly on developing the capacity of our own individuals. And so that really caused us to pay attention to teacher pipelines. We created our own educator preparation program. And so now as a school district, we can license and certify our own teachers. We have multiple pipelines with college universities in the area that fully pay pay for our teachers in our area to become teachers. So it's really a free college education. We went down into the high schools and we developed a career and technical education pathway. So now students in that education pathway earn not only a high school diploma, but an associate's degree. So when they graduate, they have 2 years of free college left before they enter the classroom. The second area we paid attention to was developing the capacity of our own. And so personalized professional learning. A lot of attention on developing national board certified teachers. So we redesigned our professional learning area to model the standards of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And today we fully fund national board teachers. We provide additional compensation for them. We mentor them as they go through the process. So that personalized professional learning has been significant for us. And then the last area is strategic staffing and compensation. So a lot of thought into thinking differently about how we pay teachers. We are a pay for performance environment. So we redesigned our compensation system. We've added some stackable compensations. We're now the home of the $100,000 plus teacher because we needed to think differently about compensation and align compensation with the performance of our teachers and then the responsibilities and duties that they take on as well. And then on this slide, you see a big investment for us was strategic staffing. Specifically, how do we leverage teachers so that more of our students have access to our most effective teachers? It goes back to something Karen said, you know, the number one in-school factor that improves student achievement is the teacher. And so if we can pour our attention into those individuals and then think strategically about ensuring that more of our kids have access to those great teachers, then that's a significant opportunity. And so we explored a concept called opportunity culture. It was developed in the state of North Carolina by a group called Public Impact. We've worked hand in hand with them over the last several years. And so as we think about designing for that, we had a variety of folks at that initial table way back in 2019. As the superintendent, knowing that the teacher is the number one factor, then I, as the leader of the organization, was going to be a part of this design. So I came to the table along with our really bigger than human resource department. I actually blew that up and created a human capital division now. Then our in-campus leaders, so we engaged our principals that leaned into this work, principals that said, hey, pick me, I want to be a part of the redesign and the thinking about how we best utilize that lever we call teacher. And then Public Impact, again, as the master designers and creators of this piece, we wanted to make sure that we had the best folks at the table to help us make design decisions. And then as we began to design and create, one of my favorite quotes is from Edwards Deming. And he said that our organization, your organization, any organization is perfectly designed to achieve the results that we're achieving. And so we took that quote and we really personalized it for us. So Ector County Independent School District in 2019 was perfectly designed to get 350 teacher vacancies a year. The state of Tennessee is right now perfectly designed to create 1,000 teacher vacancies every year. And when you own that and believe that and look at your systems and processes, it forces us to create change. And so we knew that we needed to create significant change because our current design is creating those vacancies. And so we completely reorganized the way that we thought about people in the organization and developed a level of accountability within the organization that made us responsible for our our talent and how we are recruiting, attracting, retaining, cultivating, and building our own teachers. Developed a renewed vision for the role of teacher in our organization. And then as we began to unpack the model of opportunity culture, there were some very specific questions that we needed to answer organizationally. What would those new roles of teacher be like? Who are the individuals that we want to fill those roles? What types of teachers do we want or need to serve in those capacity? How will we leverage the dollars, and how will we first find the dollars to do this work? And then how will we most effectively invest that money into these individuals? What process will we use to make decisions about which schools incorporate this new design thinking? And then what is the study, the research that we will embed in this to ensure that we are implementing with fidelity and that what we're doing actually works for students? And so a lot of thinking around that body of work. And so the next slide kind of talks us through what we created. And so the opportunity culture model creates a few different types of new and exciting roles for teacher. We knew that if we're going to do really good work and think strategically, we needed to redesign the traditional role of the teacher. And so along with public impact, we designed the role we call master classroom leader. This is a teacher that teaches 50% of their day, and then they coach and mentor a small group of their peers. You can see 2 to 4 other teachers during the second half of their day. And they take on the responsibility for those teachers. So from an assessment and accountability perspective, that classroom leader, that coach, is contractually responsible for the results of the students that are taught by the 2 to 4 individuals that they coach. So a lot of shared responsibility and accountability that goes into this. So that is the premier role in this organizational structure, the master classroom leader. Again, a person that teaches part of their day, really half of their day, and then they lead and coach and mentor the other half of their day. The second type of role that we created is a team reach teacher. And this is the individual that, hey, they're a really great teacher, but they just may not want to coach their peers, or that isn't something that they desire to do, but they're great. We have data that indicate they are a great teacher and they're willing to take on more students. And we're going to pay them to do that. And so a team reach teacher, again, great teacher, takes on more kids. We provide some additional supports for that person. And as you can see, they earn an additional $15,000 a year in compensation. Below that, you'll see the team reach teacher. This is an individual that provides those supports, or a team reach associate rather. They are not a certified teacher. It is a paraprofessional support individual. They provide small group instruction. They provide supports to the team reach teacher and to the master classroom leader, as again, they're taking on more students. And so this is the individual that helps them manage, if you will, the instructional environment. And then finally, an exciting piece that we've added to our opportunity culture is the teacher resident. We believe wholeheartedly in the concept of a full year paid teacher residency. We've added that into our own educator preparation program. We work with colleges and universities in which their students that are involved in education spend their entire senior year in a full year paid residency in our institution. And so the teacher resident is now immersed in our opportunity culture model. So if we think student teaching, I had a wonderful 10-week student teaching experience as an educator, and I learned everything I ever needed to know about teaching in 10 weeks. And we all know that's not true. Our teacher residents are there on the first day of school. They remain until the last day of school. And as you can see, we provide a $45,000 a year compensation package for those teacher residents. I would love, as a senior in college, to have been paid $45,000 to do my student teaching, but that's what these folks experience. And the quality that they have on the other end is pretty significant. And so those are some of the roles that are part of our opportunity culture design. What does this look like in a school? And so on the left side of your screen, you see, so I'll say that's a typical 5th grade environment. You have a multi-classroom leader, again, who teaches half a day and coaches the other half of the day. In this particular situation, that multi-classroom leader is coaching 2 teachers that are on their team, or 3 teachers that are on their team. And so that's how they spend their time. And so you can see that particular team. On the right side, you see a little bit of a different model. Again, the same MCL, teach half a day, lead half a day, coach half a day. And then you see a team reach teacher. Again, those are the folks that take on more students. And so that person is being paid an additional $15,000 to take on more students. And you actually see 2 of those on the team. And then the reach associate, which again is the paraprofessional. That could also be the teacher resident. They kind of rotate in and out of that opportunity. That's a part of that team structure. There are many different ways. Those are just a couple of the models that we are using in our own environment. And then, so the impact upon ECISD, our organization, has been significant. And so remember in 2019, we had 350 teacher vacancies. This year, we started the year with 36 teacher vacancies. So I've gone from an 18% teacher vacancy rate to a 1% teacher vacancy rate for a variety of reasons. The primary reason being opportunity culture. We've been able to eliminate some of those substitute teacher roles because we've replaced them with these opportunities. More of our students today have access to really great teachers because of this role. We were a failing school district in 2019. Today, the state of Texas labels us with a B, which for this district, that's the first time in our history that we've ever had that type of academic rating. And so we're experiencing significantly different academic achievement, elementary, middle, and high school because of the investments that we've made in the people that serve our students every day. I think one of the best stories is the staffing piece. So this summer we had an assistant principal vacancy. And so I am the final level of interview for assistant principals. And so this individual came in and she and I were chatting quickly and had a healthy conversation. I was very impressed with her and offered her the job. And she left the office, all excited. The next day I got a phone call that she turned down the job. The reason she did is because she was going to lose money. She was a master classroom leader, so the MCL. She realized she's going to take a pay cut to become an administrator. And so she has now chose to stay in the classroom. The real irony there is she's actually our secondary teacher of the year this year. Again, a great individual. But we've seen significant improvements in the quality and quantity of staff members because of this strategic staffing nature. And then student growth has been significant too, because more kids have access to great teacher. So the big question, right, how'd you pay for all of this? The nice thing is opportunity culture for us is revenue neutral. While there is a cost to the system, the costs are already built into the way that we fund schools. So the way we fund this at the campus level is schools trade-in vacancies. And again, in our organization, I had 350 teacher vacancies. We simply, at the campus level, they trade in and really turn into cash those vacancies in our system. The average cost for a teacher with benefits is $75,000. And so when a school trades in a vacant position, they have $75,000 in cash that they can utilize to reinvest in their own school. And so opportunity culture in Ector County ISD is revenue neutral. It is fully funded at the campus level because our leaders trade in positions that they do not need, or they think more creatively and innovatively about how to reinvest and utilize talent within their own environment. Rethinking student schedules, just how we organize the day, is a part of the design and development process, so that helps principals and leaders kind of think through. In the state of Texas, so legislatively, our state in 2015 created something called District of Innovation, which basically is the opportunity for a school system to waive approximately 2/3 of education law in Texas. And embedded in those flexibilities are human capital flexibilities. And so as a local organization, we leverage some of those flexibilities, one of those being class size. We're not limited by how the state defines class size. We're able to ebb and flow class size because of that waiver provided by our state. And then we have another opportunity called teacher incentive allotment. So again, a stackable compensation, leveraging opportunities to fully fund and pay for teachers for the really good work that they do. The next slide really talks about the journey that we take, and I'm going to use the word journey. Strategic staffing and compensation and these types of investment, this type of thinking is a process. None of this work happens overnight. It happened for us over years and continues to happen. So in 2019, it was simply a whole year of design thinking, bringing teams together and thinking, dreaming, imagining about the possibilities. What could this be? How will we design this organizationally? We implemented in 10 schools in year 2. So the 2021 school year we brought another group of schools on in 21-22, and then in 22-23, yet more schools. Today, we're at 23 schools out of our 45 in the organization, and we will continue to add a few schools that choose to opt in each year. This is not a strategy for everyone. While strategic staffing is a strategy for everyone. We all need to think creatively about how we leverage the talent. This particular tactic of opportunity culture may not be right for every school, but certainly for the schools that opt in our environment has been a huge win for them. More students have access to great teachers, and then more teachers have opportunity to kind of spread their wings from a teacher leadership profession. And then they're certainly being well compensated. Many teachers making well over $100,000 because of the stackable compensations and opportunities that we have in place for folks.
Scott, thank you
Yes.
so much. We really appreciate you telling us about what's happening in Texas, and just also just the push on us to think creatively and with our funding and with our great educators. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I am going to switch us now to another state. Let's move in to North Carolina. So I'm going to invite Erin Swanson to also hop on to the call now. She's going to tell us what's happening in Edgecombe County, where they're implementing similar models. So Erin, really excited to have you. Erin is the Assistant Superintendent for Innovation and Strategic Planning for Edgecombe County Public Schools.
Thank you, Karen. And it is great to be here with you all. Thanks so much for having me. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about Edgecombe County Public Schools and our work with strategic staffing. So Edgecombe County is an Eastern North Carolina school district. If you're familiar with the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill Triangle area, we're about a little over an hour east of that area. We are a rural school district, relatively small. We have under 5,500 students in 15 schools. We are adding 4 schools from a neighboring district in 24-25, so we're growing a bit, but still a small school system. A relatively diverse student population. So 59% of our students are Black, 22% white, 14% Hispanic, and 5% multiracial. And the majority of our students do qualify for free and reduced price lunch. You'll also see here that we are considered an economically depressed county. We're ranked 99th out of 100 counties in economic development in a recent report by the Public School Forum. We have limited job opportunities in our area, a pretty high unemployment rate, and so a lot of our families do struggle economically as well. Karen, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. So just a little bit of context for our strategic staffing. And I think you'll hear some commonalities between what Dr. Muri shared and what I'll share, both in terms of our motivation for engaging in strategic staffing work, but also just in terms of the model itself. So I'll try to hit on some of the differences here. But I do think one of the things that Dr. Muri's presentation and mine highlight is that strategic staffing can work across contexts. So in a larger district or in a smaller rural district, strategic staffing is a really incredible strategy. So in Edgecombe County, we had seen many years of incremental gains in student outcomes. When I moved into the role I'm in now in 2016, 6 of our 12 schools were not meeting growth. So 6 were either meeting or exceeding growth, but we had quite a few schools that were not even meeting growth. Our proficiency was, in some cases in the single digits in some of our schools. And we had been inching forward in proficiency, but we knew that that just wasn't good enough for our kids. It wasn't what they deserved. In addition, we were losing a lot of teachers. So we saw a pretty significant turnover rate every year. And like Dr. Muri said, we had students that were in middle school who had not had a certified teacher for multiple years in their elementary career. So their 2nd grade teacher, their 3rd grade teacher, their 4th grade teacher, all of those folks were long-term substitutes. And so we knew that that had a pretty significant impact on student achievement. And so we had a new leadership team that came in around 2015, 2016, and that team really prioritized human capital. We knew that if we were going to improve student outcomes, we had to first focus on getting great folks into our school buildings, into our classrooms, just highly qualified people at every level. And so you can see here 3 key strategies that we used initially back in those early days. We partnered with North Carolina State University, which had actually recently begun a new principal preparation program, kind of a grow your own program, where they focused on bringing in highly effective educators from rural Eastern North Carolina school districts and preparing them to become principals. And so Edgecombe County Public Schools partnered with that program. I'm a product of that program, as are, almost half of the administrators in Edgecombe County now. Our leadership then also did something pretty bold for 2016 in a rural district. They hired an innovation director, so somebody who could really be forward-looking and not reactive to student situations or parent conflicts. This was somebody who was really focusing on the future and on how we were going to make some bold moves to increase student achievement in Edgecombe County Public Schools. And then finally, we had the opportunity to hear from folks at Public Impact who had started their work in Charlotte-Mecklenburg public school system in North Carolina a couple of years before about this thing called opportunity culture. So we were really inspired by what we heard from Brian Hassel and his team and thought, if this can work in Charlotte-Mech, we think it can work in Edgecombe County Public Schools, a very different context. But we were really excited about the opportunity to rethink teacher leadership and think about how keeping excellent teachers in our district and having them impact more students could really make a big difference for our kids. And so you can see our timeline for strategic staffing here in Edgecombe County Public Schools. We were fortunate. We were one of the first districts in the state to receive an advanced teaching roles grant from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. They started a pilot back in 2016 to encourage districts to explore this idea of strategic staffing. And so we were one of the first participants in that program. We received some funding from DPI. And that funding really allowed us to have the dollars to partner with Public Impact. We used that money for that technical assistance and just can't say enough about the partnership of Public Impact and their support throughout our design process. And so when we started partnering with Public Impact, we started with a design process for Edgecombe County Public Schools. We started at the district level and then very quickly moved to designing with the schools in our North Edgecombe High School feeder pattern, which at the time was our most struggling feeder pattern, 3 pretty small schools that had had a very hard time recruiting and retaining teachers, very low student achievement levels. And so we thought, we have got to make a difference in these schools. And so we put great principals in those schools. We applied for restart status in those schools, which sounds similar to what Dr. Muri described as their innovation district. We had some additional flexibilities that we could use in those schools. And we started with opportunity culture in those schools. And then what you see here is just our rollout process. So we didn't start with all 12 schools in year 1. We started with 3 schools. The next year, we did a design process with additional schools. So we went into another feeder pattern in the district, which we call our Tarboro High School feeder pattern. And we started designing with those schools. And then the following year, we implemented with those schools and started designing with our 3rd feeder pattern. So that over the course of 3 years, all of the schools in our district had the experience of designing and implementing this strategic staffing approach. I will say that we focused primarily at first on our elementary and middle schools. We did, however, start implementation early on with North Edgecombe High School as well, and I can talk a little bit about the decision there as well. And then the pandemic came. You all know that threw a wrench in a lot of things, but we have recently started working with Public Impact again. We're calling it Opportunity Culture 2.0 redesign, where we're going back to all of our schools and we're really taking a hard look at our data, at what's working, at what's not working, and how we can really leverage what Public Impact has learned over the years to improve our models in Edgecombe County. We also have added all of our high schools to the model as well this year, so we're really excited about that. So in terms of designing our model, again, you'll see a lot of similarities here between Edgecombe and Ector County. Our design team was really a cross-functional design team, and I think that's one of the most important pieces of opportunity culture design is you really have to bring everybody to the table. So we had our human capital folks, innovation folks, we had our superintendent, our curriculum and instruction people. It doesn't say finance on here, but you've got to bring your finance folks to the table too, because this is an initiative that really requires having everybody weigh in on how this is going to impact, not only our schools and our students, but how it's going to impact just the way they operate in their departments. Again, we did rely on Public Impact support to help us through this, and we learned from the lessons that they learned in Charlotte-Mech. And again, we really started by saying, okay, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here? We want to improve student achievement. We want to improve teacher recruitment and retention. And we just really want to unleash the creativity, the innovation that we know is in our schools, because, we knew that we weren't just doing opportunity culture. That's what I say to people all the time. You know, if they say, well, I want to do opportunity culture. I said, well, you're not really going to do opportunity culture. What you're doing is you're creating a strategic staffing approach so that you can do all of the other things in your strategic plan, right? What you're really trying to do is you're trying to improve student achievement, improve opportunities for students. And so we became very clear on that. And then we said, okay, so then what does it look like to create a staffing approach in our schools that is going to enable that work to happen? And so we talked about, how is that different than traditional coaching? As a principal of a K-8 school, I had an instructional coach. She coached 40 teachers. And I'm sure many of you all have seen that in action as well. It is really challenging to coach 40 teachers, and I might even say impossible to effectively coach 40 teachers. And so we had to come to terms with, how is this different from those traditional coaching roles? And how are we going to make sure that we set up our teacher leaders to be more effective? And so then you'll see here as well some of those same questions that the Ector County folks asked when designing their model. This is what our model looks like now. This is a little different than it looked like in 2016, but again, very similar roles to what you saw from Scott. We have a multi-classroom leader, 3 levels of a multi-classroom leader, depending on the number of teachers that they support, but they can make up to an additional $14,000. Our multi-classroom leaders can be either full release multi-classroom leaders, which means they don't have a class of record. They do still teach students. So they might pull small groups, or they might co-teach with one of their team teachers, but they don't have a class of record. Our partial release multi-classroom leaders do still have a class of record, but they have opportunities to leave that group of students while somebody else works with them so they can coach and support the other teachers on their team. Similarly, we do have a multi-classroom team reach teacher who teaches more students and or takes on some additional responsibilities in the school. And then we also have a reach associate position, which is that higher level paraprofessional. One exciting thing that we have found is that we've had 2 or 3 reach associates actually really excel in that role and decide to pursue their teaching license. And they are now amazing teachers in our district. In fact, one is our beginning teacher of the year this year. So that reach associate role is also a phenomenal pipeline into the teaching profession. This is just a couple of examples of what our opportunity culture model looks like at the elementary level. We have some full release MCLs who support teachers across grade levels. So they might support, a couple of 3rd grade teachers, a 4th grade teacher, and a 5th grade teacher. We also have the partial release MCL where a 2nd grade teacher would support multiple teachers within that 2nd grade team. So they really wrap around that 2nd grade team. They also have the support of a reach associate that allows the multi-classroom leader to have some release time to spend more time with those team reach teachers. I really love that model. That's something that we are really just dabbling in this year, but we're really excited about the opportunity for this team of teachers to just wrap around those kids and really provide them with the personalized support that they need. At the secondary level, we have again traditionally used the sort of standalone MCL role where that MCL supports multiple teachers who might be on different teams. So we will continue to use that model. We also are looking this year at what you'll see on the left, so that partial release model where a teacher does stay in the classroom and then has that release time to support other teachers. So here you can see some of the impact we've seen over the past several years in Edgecombe County Public Schools. So we hear from our beginning teachers and really all of our teachers how much they love their multi-classroom leaders. They really are feeling more efficacy. They're seeing their students grow because they have this support. And we know right now, especially, during this time, how critical it is that teachers feel that support and really feel that they can do this, right? They can stay in the classroom, they can be effective. And we've seen that that sense of efficacy grow significantly since we've started implementing strategic staffing. We have seen teacher turnover decrease, specifically in our high need schools. We no longer have the situation on the north side of our school district where a student does not have a teacher for 3 or 4 years in a row. We have seen a significant increase in teacher retention. The principal capacity to lead, I think, is huge, right? So our principals, if we told them we were getting rid of opportunity culture, I think they would revolt because they love having multi-classroom leaders and team reach teachers in their school. It really allows them to focus on the vision and the direction and the strategy of the school, and for them to be the type of leaders that they're trained to be. And so having that layer of teacher leadership in their school has been a tremendous asset for our school leaders. And then we have seen our teacher leaders, they're staying. They're not leaving the district. In a rural district in particular. We compete with districts around us because some of those teachers can offer higher teacher supplements than we can in Edgecombe County. And we are seeing that because we're able to offer this leadership opportunity, the additional pay, that our teacher leaders are staying with us in Edgecombe. And then we have seen an increase in student growth. Last year, 11 of our 14 schools met or exceeded growth. And then we are still working on that proficiency, but we are outpacing other districts in North Carolina, and we're making some significant growth in proficiency as well. And then finally, funding the work. So like Scott said, how do you pay for all this? So we are very fortunate that in North Carolina, our state legislature has invested in this work. So I mentioned the Advanced Teaching Roles Initiative and the pilot program. Again, we did not use those grant funds to pay teacher differentials or stipends. Instead, we use those funds for our work with public impact and for a lot of the professional development that we provided to our advanced teachers. Like Scott, we also use existing funds. So our school leaders are able to trade in positions and use those dollars to pay the differentials or to pay for additional or different types of OC positions in their schools. We also leverage Title I funding for opportunity culture positions in our schools. And then we do have class size waivers as well. Again, thanks to North Carolina, we are able to increase class sizes. Now we don't, some folks say, gosh, that seems like maybe a bad idea. And we do not increase, kindergarten classes to 40 or 50 kids. But we do leverage that so that we can then take some of those positions and use them to pay those differentials for multi-classroom leaders or reach associates and so on. This approach has been very consistent. We really do our very best to not use grant funds to pay for these positions, but instead leverage the existing funds so that we can make sure that this is a sustainable program in Edgecombe County Public Schools. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Karen.
Yeah, Erin, thank you so much. And then Scott, I'd invite you to join us as well too. And Erin, I don't want to cut you off because I also would love for you to talk about like the grant program just for a second while we're still on this slide, because I think that was critical to getting you started. So feel free to go through that. And then I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions.
Yeah, it really has been critical.
Yeah.
So again, really grateful that North Carolina incentivized schools to try out these types of models. So schools are able to, districts are able to propose to the state what they want their strategic staffing models to look like. The state, in many cases, will fund those proposals, and again, the state then collects data on the effectiveness of the teachers in those roles, so that we can see what's working, what's not working. And that's been fantastic. Also, Karen, in 2023, North Carolina added a line item to the budget for teacher leaders stipends. So, that has been, particularly for our schools that are not Title I schools, it's a challenge sometimes to find those additional dollars to pay those differentials for our multi-classroom leaders or team reach teachers. And so this is a huge benefit. So now the state will provide $10,000 for a multi-classroom leader stipend, $3,000 for a expanded impact teacher or team reach teacher stipend. And so now non-Title I schools are able to take part in this program as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, while I have you two amazing district leaders on the call with so many Tennesseans, I wanted to just ask you two additional follow-up questions, and then I'll work to summarize a few things, and Sharon will close this out in just a minute. But I think for me, the biggest thing, what I noticed on both of your timeline slides, this has taken a long time. This has evolved. This is not we designed it year one, we're ready, the model's done, it's in all schools. This is something that has evolved. And so just given where all your history so far, where are you headed next? Now that you're both kind of in, I guess, year 4, 5, 6, where are you going next?
Yeah, Scott, you can go first.
Sure. So I think it's really continuing to expand as appropriate. Again, it's not for every school, and so, but it is continuing to expand and then refine the model. So we've learned a couple of lessons on the journey. One is coaching. Just because you're a teacher who wants to coach does not mean you can coach. And so we've invested actually philosophically. We adopted a system-wide coaching philosophy that we not only use with our master classroom leaders, but all leaders up and down the organization now subscribe to the same philosophy. And then we hyper train our MCLs to make sure that they already know how to teach, but it's the coaching piece that is many times the learning opportunity. So we provide very specific coaching to the MCLs on coaching. So just continuing to be intentional with that work, and then listening to research. So Texas Tech University, we contracted with them in 2019 to do a longitudinal study of our opportunity culture implementation. In fact, next week at our board meeting will be their 4th presentation on the research on our own opportunity culture implementation. So we'll continue to listen to the research and then use that to continuously improve the model, tweak and adjust. But coaching will continue to be a big investment that we make in the model and on our folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Erin, what would you say? Where are you guys headed, and what's a lesson learned for you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, like Scott said, I think that professional development for our teacher leaders is huge. And that's something that we are continuing to prioritize as well. We've had some great partnerships over the years with Public Impact, with New Leaders, which has a program called Emerging Leaders, and our folks have participated in that. They've been trained in cognitive coaching and adaptive schools. And, I think just continuing to build on that professional learning for our teachers, I think our teacher leaders is really important. So that's something that we're prioritizing. And then, as I mentioned as well, we are kind of going through what we call our 2.0 design right now. And I think what we've learned is that it's really, while the district sets the parameters for this work, the decisions really need to continue happening at the school level, and the school teams really have to continue to have a pulse on, what is the data telling us? What are the needs of our teachers and our students? And really, I think have to have the permission to continue to evolve their models so that they're meeting the changing needs of their school communities. And so we've learned a lot again from Public Impact about what they've learned over the years. We're trying to leverage some of those lessons and really trying to again empower our school teams to really think about what's working and what's not, and how can they improve.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna wrap this Q&A time for now, but your email addresses will be sent out with all of the follow-up information. So get ready for Tennesseans asking you questions. We're so grateful for your time. Thank you so much. I'm going to keep going, but thank you both. Feel free to stay to the end. All right. What I want to share also about Tennessee is that there is also work happening along these same lines in Tennessee schools. And so if you all following this webinar download this paper and want to see more details about the Edgecombe County case study, the Ector ISD case study, there are also 2 case studies in the report highlighting Clarksville, Montgomery County schools and also Hamilton County schools who have begun this work. So in those case studies, you'll see a little bit about their why, which is different from what you just heard from those 2 case studies, and then also different from each other. So, and you'll also see about their leader roles, the stipends, the way they've structured the roles, some of the outcomes that they're seeing. So in Clarksville, they really wanted to build and diversify a local teacher pipeline. In Hamilton, they wanted to change the conversation about educator roles. In Clarksville, they've developed 2 primary teacher leader roles, a multi-classroom leader and a primary mentor teacher. One of them coaches, one of them doesn't. Both oversee and support their apprenticeship teacher model that they have, their residency model. They have both, in both cases, they have strong eligibility criteria to become one of these leaders. They teacher leaders, they also offer stipends. They're using funding creatively. But in all of these cases, they're experiencing great success with their models, are continuing with them, investing in them further. And doing it for different reasons to support their talent pipeline and also their students. So what I'll also say now is just out of these 4 case studies, and you heard really a pretty good summary of the slide I'm going to show you next from the 2 leaders we just had on the call. But in really getting to know these districts and understand their work, wanted to pull out for everyone into this report some just summary guiding principles that I heard in all 4 scenarios for folks who are working to do more strategic staffing around their educator roles. And so that's what you'll see on this slide. And there are more details in the report. But the first guiding principle that I heard across all 4 sites was assess your readiness for strategic staffing work before you start this journey. You just heard Scott, Dr. Muri say that this is not for everyone. There are some schools that are really ready for this. There might be some schools that aren't, and that's okay. So just understanding, where is funding going to come from? Do we have staff capacity to start to do this design work? Do we need help from an external source? Do we have schools and leaders that would be ready to take on this challenge? So really understanding your readiness for this, and that it's not just a quick fix, that there is a design year and an implementation, and there's a learning phase to this and a scaling phase to this. The second thing that I heard really consistently from everyone is that this work is very cross-departmental. Get everyone to the table who needs to be there. Professional learning teams, finance teams, HR teams, principals. There are so many people that are going to need to be a part of shaping the design of these roles, the models, any sort of pay associated with it, release time, et cetera. So make sure that this work at its onset, but also throughout, as you continue to evolve the work, it does not become siloed into a certain space. Commit to implementation fidelity was another piece of feedback that I heard from all of the leaders that I talked to, in that at the core of the models that we discuss in this paper, great teacher leadership and increasing the reach of effective educators is at the center of them. And so making sure that you are only putting in your most highly effective teachers into scenarios where they will have expanded student reach and expanded impact on other teachers is really central to keeping the model going. Plan for dedicated capacity to support new teacher leaders. So again, we have many highly effective teachers across the state, and some of them may have leadership and management experiences and others might not. And that's okay, but being prepared to really support these amazing educators with taking on new management responsibilities is really important. And then finally, you just heard Erin Swanson say so beautifully there at the end, to let your strategic staffing work evolve over time, monitor the results, share your story, but also to let schools have a lot of say in how these roles are functioning within their building, and how they're thinking about time and where kids are, was really essential to the work. I am going to turn now to ask Dr. Sharon Roberts to come back on and close us out, but really do want to just thank everyone for joining us today. And Sharon, I'll let you close us.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being with us today, to joining us, spending this time with us. And thank you to our incredible district presenters, Dr. Scott Muri from Ector County, Texas, and Erin Swanson from Edgecombe County Public Schools in North Carolina. And I also want to give a special thank you to Karen Lawrence for her leadership and passion and commitment to supporting teachers in Tennessee. Like all of you on this call, SCORE's committed to seeing not only a stable educator workforce in our state, but a flourishing one. We believe that if we act on the research around educator talent while also innovating educator roles, that we can create a clear and compelling understanding of what it really looks like to be a professional educator in our state. To support all practitioners and education leaders in this endeavor, you can download all 3 reports in the SCORE Educator Labor Market Series. You see the QR code here on this slide now. That will take you to those reports. We'll also send a follow-up email to everyone on this call with those resources linked. Please remember that SCORE is always here and ready to connect with you. Should you have questions or thoughts, or maybe you have an interest, you're with a district and you have an interest more in this topic, we'd love to share with you following this webinar. You see our email here, info@tnscore.org. We check this inbox every day, and we would love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for the work that you do every single day for students. We hope you have a great rest of the week, and we wish you a wonderful summer break.